There's a version of you that's been doing everything right. You heard breakfast kickstarts your metabolism, so you ate breakfast. You heard eating after 8 p.m. goes straight to fat, so you stopped eating at 7:30. You heard you needed to hit the fat burning zone, so you did 45 minutes on the elliptical 3 times a week. And somehow, it still didn't work the way they said it would. Here's the thing, you weren't doing anything wrong. You were just following advice built on myths. And some of those myths have been floating around the internet for 30 years. Today's BS is the idea that fat loss is about timing your meals, hitting a magic zone, and following a set of rules that, if you're honest, mostly make you feel like you're failing. It's not. You are not failing. Fat loss is actually simpler than that and more annoying because the simple version doesn't sell supplements. So how did we get here? Most of these myths didn't come from nowhere. They came from a misunderstanding of something real. Take meal timing. Early animal studies, along with later research into circadian rhythms, suggested that meal timing might influence metabolism under certain conditions. Somewhere along the way, those nuances turned into rigid rules. Researchers ran with it, and then supplement companies ran even faster. By the time it reached your feed in 2019 as a science-backed tip, it had been through about 15 rounds of telephone. Or how about the breakfast myth? Your metabolism needs to be kickstarted in the morning the way an old car needs to be warmed up. That's a metaphor that made sense to people. It felt biological, and it stuck. The fat burning zone on every cardio machine? That one came from a real physiological concept. Your body does burn a higher percentage of fat at lower intensities, but percentage isn't the same as total amount, and that detail didn't make it onto the label. Let's start with the one that's still on every gym wall, the fat burning zone. You've seen it. The chart on the treadmill shows 2 zones, one for cardio, one for fat burning. And the fat burning zone is always the slower one, which feels wrong, but also kind of hopeful because walking on a treadmill sounds so much more achievable than sprinting. What it's actually telling you though. At lower intensities, your body gets a higher percentage of its energy from fat rather than carbohydrates. That part is definitely true. But here's what the chart doesn't tell you. The total amount of calories burned at lower intensity is also much lower. Over days and weeks, total energy balance, not which fuel you're burning during a single workout, is what primarily determines fat loss, where that energy comes from hour by hour. Think of it this way. If you burn 200 calories and 60% comes from fat, that's 120 fat calories. If you burn 400 calories and 40% comes from fat, that's 160 fat calories. The slower workout burned less fat, even though the percentage was higher. The math was always right there. The chart just didn't show all of it. Now let's move on to the eating after 8 p.m. If eating after dark caused fat gain, night shift workers would be in serious trouble. The nurses, the factory workers, the security guards eating dinner at 11 p.m., they'd all be expanding at a medically alarming rate. And somehow they're not. Your body doesn't have a clock that switches from burning mode to storing mode at 8 p.m. What it has is a running total. The question it's always asking is, how much energy came in today and how much went out? Now, there is something real hiding inside this myth. People who eat late at night often eat more total food, not because of the hour, because of the situation. It's usually relaxed in front of something on TV, often after a day of undereating. The environment drives the eating, not the time on the clock. So if cutting off eating at 8 p.m. helps you eat less overall, great, use it. But it's the less, not the timing, that's doing the work. Well, the breakfast myth has had an incredibly good run. Skip breakfast and your metabolism slows down. Your body goes into starvation mode. You'll be storing fat by 10 a.m. Skipping breakfast doesn't suddenly shut down your metabolism. Your resting metabolic rate, the energy your body burns just keeping you alive, doesn't care whether you had eggs at 7 a.m. It's running the whole time. The idea that missing a meal throws it into emergency mode is more dramatic than evidence supports. What does affect your metabolic rate? Your body size, your muscle mass, your age to some degree. These are the real levers, and most of them are slow, moving, and boring, which is probably why we don't talk about them as much. If skipping breakfast makes you hungry and grumpy and more likely to eat a large lunch and an early dinner and a late snack, then yes, breakfast might help you. Not because it started your metabolism, but because it helped you manage your total intake. It's always about the total. This one might be the most stubborn myth of all, spot reduction. The idea that doing crunches burns belly fat. Researchers actually tested this properly. They had people do hundreds of leg press repetitions, but only on one leg, for weeks. One leg worked, one leg didn't. At the end of the study, they measured fat in both legs. Both legs lost the same amount of fat. Your body doesn't pull fat from wherever you're working. It pulls from wherever it feels like, which is determined by your genes, your hormones, and a system you have very little direct control over. The fat you most want to lose is often the fat your body is most reluctant to give up. Doing crunches will strengthen your abdominal muscles. That's real and that's good, but the fat on top of them will stay exactly where it is until your overall energy balance changes. You can't aim a calorie deficit. One that sounds so precise, it must be true. 1 pound of fat equals 3,500 calories. Cut 500 calories a day for a week, lose exactly 1 pound. Repeat forever. This came from a paper written in 1958. The researcher was estimating the energy stored in a pound of fat tissue and working out the math. And it's true, a pound of human fat tissue does contain roughly 3,500 calories worth of stored energy. The problem is assuming your body behaves like a calculator. It wasn't meant to be a universal prescription, but it became one anyway. The problem is that your body isn't a spreadsheet. As you lose weight, your metabolism adapts. You move slightly less without noticing. Your hunger signals shift. The same deficit that produced results in 1 month produces different results in month 4. The math keeps changing because you keep changing. So the rule isn't wrong exactly, it's just incomplete. Like estimating how long a road trip will take without accounting for traffic, construction stops, or the fact that you're going to need to use the bathroom at some point. It's a rough guide, not a guarantee. And lastly, let's talk about the fat-burning foods, because that one is definitely all over the internet. Green tea, apple cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, grapefruit, these come back around every few years with new confidence and the same claim. Eat this specific thing and your body will burn more fat. Some of them have a thread of real evidence. Green tea extract does have a measurable thermogenic effect in some studies. Studies suggest the effect is modest, often around a few dozen calories per day, though results vary, which, if you drink it instead of something else with calories in it, could add up over time. But let's be honest about the gap between measurable thermogenic effect and fat-burning superfood. The gap is where most supplement marketing lives. These foods aren't fraudulent. They're just at the margins. And most people aren't struggling at the margins. They're struggling with the basics. Eating habits, sleep, stress, consistency. No amount of cayenne is going to sort that out. Here's the funny part. A lot of these myths appear to work, but not for the reason people think. Stop eating after 8 p.m. You might lose weight because you stopped eating a bowl of ice cream every night, not because your metabolism changed at sunset. If you started eating breakfast, you might lose weight because it helps you manage your hunger, not because breakfast turned your metabolism on. The rule wasn't magic. It simply changed your behavior. So what actually works? Here's the version nobody wants to make a documentary about. A consistent calorie deficit over time. That's the mechanism. Everything else is either helping you maintain that deficit or it isn't. Protein helps, not because it's magic, but because it keeps you fuller longer and helps preserve muscle during weight loss, especially when combined with resistance training. Preserving muscle helps maintain metabolic rate during weight loss and keeps more of the weight you lose coming from fat instead of lean tissue. Sleep matters more than people expect. And this is coming from a nutrition coach who has worked with tons of women who didn't realize that getting less than 6 hours of sleep was harming their fat loss results. One bad week of sleep can drive up hunger hormones and push you toward eating more without feeling like you made a choice. And resistance training matters, like a lot. Not to burn the calories in the session. And you can out-eat a workout in about 4 minutes. But it's important to keep your body composition where you want it as the weight comes off. And not only that, you need to be strengthening your tendons, your ligaments, your muscles, and your bone density. Resistance training is also so much more important for older individuals when it comes to bone density and keeping your strength up, because you don't want to fall when you are 80 and break a hip. And what matters even more is the consistency. It matters more than any single tactic. The best diet is the one you can actually maintain, not the one with the best mechanism on paper. None of this is exciting, and it's not supposed to be. It's just fairly simple. Look, the myths exist because certainty is more comfortable than nuance. It's easier to believe that eating at the wrong time caused your plateau than to reckon with the fact that total intake is hard to maintain indefinitely. It's easier to believe that one specific food is sabotaging you than to sit with the reality that consistency is unglamorous and takes time. The myths don't survive because people are gullible. They survive because they offer a simple explanation for something genuinely difficult. What the evidence actually says is more useful and less dramatic. Eat in a way that creates a moderate deficit you can sustain. Prioritize protein, sleep well, move your body in ways that include some resistance, and be patient with a process that doesn't move in a straight line, because progress is never linear. You don't need another thing to optimize. You probably already know most of what you need to know. The work is in doing it, not in finding the perfect version of it first. Stay curious and question the hype.